duration, meaning how long a tone lasts. And that is measured in music by beats. And beats are the constant, steady pulse of a piece of music, like you can hear me tapping here. That would represent beats. Sometimes we get confused because you hear something like a record or something on Spotify, or maybe you hear the marching band coming down the street. Something like that, and you think, boy, I really like the beat of that music. Well, you don't really like the beat because the beat is just this. Like a clock ticking or like the metronome. We don't want to confuse that with the rhythm, which is the various lengths of the notes and the silences. That's this. That kind of thing. So the beat is the constant steady pulse, the tick-tock, tick-tock, and rhythm the more complicated timings. When we hear that constant steady pulse, like this, even though I'm trying hard to make every one of those taps exactly the same, they're not. Even if I had the computer generate these taps, eventually we would start to hear them in smaller groups. And if we were in a class together, I'd have everyone clap this with me. And you'd notice that eventually you start to hear them in little subgroups. And the most common one to hear is groups of 4. So if I use these vertical lines to represent the taps that you're hearing, it's only a matter of time till either I start tapping louder or we start hearing them as 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's just human nature to, when we hear things, when we see things, we want to immediately categorize it. When we see a stranger's face, probably early man would say, is that person a friend? Is he part of my tribe? Or is he a threat? Or anything we see, we want to categorize it. The same thing would happen with sounds. We hear something and think, what is that? How can I hear that? And so we're mentally trying to organize it all the time. So these 4 taps, groups of 4 taps, I could represent like this. You see I have these longer vertical lines coming in now. And now it's actually much easier to see what I'm talking about, as the first one of each group seems to be a little emphasized. Of course, I'm doing it purposely now because I want you to hear that when we hear a sequence of beats, we tend to put them into groups. And as you can see from the screen, that's called meter, how those beats are grouped into visual equal groupings. Now, of course, music is not written like this. We don't see all of that. Instead, we see this. This is normal notation. These black notes with the line on them are called quarter notes. These are the equal beat units. These vertical lines correspond to these vertical lines up here. And this would be exactly the same kind of thing that I was just tapping. 4 beats per unit. Now, these units are called measures. And I have to remember not to use that word until I tell you that these equal beat units are measures. In this one, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 measures. And they're divided by these lines called bar lines. They don't affect the timing in any way. They just help us see where these units are. Up here, I use these vertical lines. Down here, these. In fact, sometimes measures are called bars as sort of a slang. So measure, 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 bar line, bar line, bar line, bar line. 4 beats per measure is not the only thing that can happen in music. Another very common one is to have 3 beats per measure, which I've demonstrated again. And this one would be represented like this. You see the measures now only have 3 quarter notes in them. They're still the bar lines. They still all have the same thing, 3 1-beat notes. But I want to point out something else to you here. Right up here, These numbers, 3, 4, is called the time signature, or sometimes called the meter signature. And they tell the musician what the counting, what the meter is going to be. The 3 on top means 3 beats per measure. So I don't have to add them up. I can just look there and see, oh, it's 3 beats. If we look back at the previous one, that had 4 beats per measure. This one has 3. I have to wait for my little lines to come in here again. Now you notice that they're 3 over 4, not 3/4, it's not a fraction. And that 4 on the bottom is telling us that in this piece of music, a quarter note is going to represent 1 beat, which we said. And there are times when that is not true, but for this example, 4 on the bottom, quarter note represents 1 beat. 3 beats per measure, quarter note represents 1 beat.